Are you currently shopping for a computer and you're looking at prices saying to yourself, how can a computer range from $179 all the way up to $2,000 or even more in some cases? There are ways to determine what you need and how much you should be spending. Stay tuned. So computers come in at many different price points, and what determines those price points is what you're getting inside of it. Now, computers can get complex, and I don't want to get into details, but depending on the type of processor you have, the type of hard drive, the size of the hard drive, the amount of memory you have in that computer, the size of the screen, the battery type, so many different variables that determine what you're getting and how much you should be spending for it. And of course, the brand. What you want to look for depending on your price. Let's say your price range is anywhere between $300 and $600, and you're potentially buying maybe a second computer to complement a computer at work, or just a computer you can use for casual use, or even a computer for a kid. And let's say you stumble upon Walmart. Walmart has some pretty good deals, and I've seen lots of computers. Now, there are different OSs that you need to look out for. Of course, there's Windows. Then you have Chrome OS. Chrome OS has its pros and its cons. It is primarily catered to people that are in the Google ecosystem and primarily use the web. And when I say the web, it's not necessarily a web-based OS, but it is more of a cloud-based OS. It has seamless updates that happen in the background. You don't have to really think about it. And the hardware requirements aren't as intensive as, let's say, a Windows machine. It does have access to a lot more lightweight apps, but when you want to get into the content creation or crunching huge numbers, if you're an accountant, or if you want to get into some serious gaming, you kind of want to lean towards getting a PC running a Windows Home or better and bypassing the Windows S mode. Now, Windows S mode only allows you to install apps from Microsoft's App Store. If you've had any experience at Microsoft App Store, or if you have a chance to kind of browse around, there aren't that many options to choose from. Obviously, they've tried to flesh out their store way back in the days where they were trying to get their mobile OS platform off the ground. Unfortunately, a lot of developers haven't caught on. There are some decent apps, but you don't want an OS that's dependent on a very non-robust, I want to say, selections of apps. Of course, Android and iOS, they're the leaders. Those are the mobile platforms that you want to kind of focus on. Like if you want to, kind of get something that's kind of an in-between, you can get something like an iPad, which isn't a laptop per se, but you can get keyboard add-ons, and with the latest iOS updates, it does accommodate, mouse input and keyboard input pretty nicely. There's a lot of reviews out there. Just go ahead and search, and you can see a lot of people have substituted laptops for iPads. I'm personally not an iPad or an Apple user in general, but that is a route you can take. But back to Chrome OS, I mean, it's fairly decent. If a lot of things that you do revolves around Google Sheets, Google Docs, it's a good choice. I mean, those machines range anywhere from $180 all the way up to $1,000. Now, would I recommend getting a $1,000 Chrome OS or a Chromebook? No. What do you really get for that price? There aren't really that many apps that are there that's going to fulfill the needs for that price point. There are people that are bold enough to try a Linux variant or a Linux OS. I would not recommend it. You can't really buy that many computers that are pre-configured with Linux built into it. That's something you'd have to play around with and figure out how to do on your own. But the learning curve is probably too much for most people, even though you could get a lot out of it. I would stick with your typical Windows configurations or Chromebooks or Mac, depending on what you need. Really is contingent on what type of or how much rather you're going to spend on hardware. I believe Mac books in general start anywhere at maybe about $8.99 or $9.99, and you get a lot for your money. But for those that are really shopping around for a computer, you can get something that's not bad for $300. So an HDD is a hard disk drive. Now, a hard disk drive, as it sounds in the name, is a disk. It's literally platters that are spinning at very rapid speeds. Back in the day, you'd get a hard drive with faster RPM, which means the disks and platters inside can move at a rapid speed. The problem is when you have something as complex as, almost like a record player, where there's a device or a mechanism inside that's literally making contact with disks that are spinning at very, very fast speeds. At some point, that's going to fail. I don't care how good it is going to fail at some point. Or if you drop it, those things are very fragile, very delicate. The new thing, which has been out for quite some time, is solid state drives. There are no moving parts. It is literally just kind of a memory module, so to speak, that data is more quickly being accessed within this, non-movable internal hard drive that's in your laptop. So with all that said, the way to go is SSD. So the displays in a lot of these laptops can go from LCD to LED to OLED. Now it's a bit tricky to explain those technologies. I personally would say if you have the time, just go to Walmart or go to Target or maybe not Target, but go to any of an electronics store like Best Buy and just play around with those computers. See how they work. You want to kind of turn it to a specific angle and kind of see how bright it is. It really depends on how the manufacturer implements that technology. I mean, they use these names to kind of make these machines sound a lot better than they are. In a lot of cases, they may not be. So really go play around with it. You want to make sure your laptop, and most laptops do nowadays, come with both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Bluetooth is important because you can hook a lot of external peripherals. Depending on what you want to do, you can probably do some live streaming. A lot of the cameras nowadays does connect via Bluetooth. And then you have options to connect even some of the headsets that you use with your mobile phone. You can use that with Zoom calls. You can hook up a lot of the wireless headphones to your computer. Also, wireless keyboards and mice. Connectivity. Connectivity is tricky. The market trend is kind of leaning towards thin, portable machines and, saving money. When you add a lot of components to a computer, you add weight. You have to configure that internal motherboard to be able to accommodate these extra peripheral connections. So cutting back on that does allow for a nicer, streamlined computer. Apple's notorious for it. I think most of their machines only have USB-C ports. This particular computer, and for my needs, I do like to have a full-size USB-A connection. And that's your typical USB connection that you would see on most printers, keyboards, and mice. The new connection is USB-C, which you'll typically find on most Android phones. At least most modern Android phones like the Google Pixels, Samsung phones, LG phones, Sony phones, things like that. And USB-C is probably what you want to make sure you can get on any computer that you're buying. That is the standard. It is the way that you're going to charge, hook up external USB devices, even hook up to some of the nicer, higher end projectors and computer monitors. So if it has that at the price point, perfect, get it. You want to get something that at least has HD resolution. Now, HD can mean anything. HD can mean 720p, 1080p, not to get too technical, but high definition. Most televisions support high definition. You also have 4K. A lot of manufacturers for these laptops, they advertise it as HD. You want to check what HD means. That can mean anything. That just means the resolution supports a certain amount of pixels. Most of the computers in a lower price point is not going to have the greatest camera. That's just one of the trade-offs. There has to be trade-offs to get these computers at a lower price point. So typically you're probably going to get a 720p camera, which isn't the end of the world. I would prefer 1080p, They're sharper, they're brighter in some cases, but that can depend on the type of optics that's physically built into the computer. So that is also something you have to physically be in person, check it out and see for yourself. Now, of course, battery life. Now that's tricky. The laptop I have here, it says it gets great battery life. Now, a lot of computer manufacturers are just going to generalize. It really depends on how you use the computer and the processor that's in it. Now, a lot of people don't realize, depending on the processor, they're optimized, depending on the generation of the processor and the actual silicone that it's built on. They're built with a certain power wattage output. A lot of mobile processors typically are more efficient in terms of the amount of power that they use and the type of batteries that are implemented in these laptops. Now, lithium-ion batteries do add a bit of expense to the configuration of the computer. So a lot of the lower-end laptops you're going to see are going to have smaller batteries, unfortunately. You have to keep that in mind. Don't think that you're going to get 14 hours of continuous use just off the internal battery of these things. It's just not going to happen. You're going to have to carry your charger around. And that's a sacrifice you're going to have to make. But nowadays, it's easy. You probably travel in a car. Most airplanes have a connection that you can connect into. If you're staying at a hotel, I mean, that's fine. A lot of us are at home anyway, so you can plug these in when you're sitting home and when you're out and about. Even if you get about 4, 5, 6 hours out of these things, that might suffice. It's not a whole lot of places, unfortunately, that we're able to go nowadays anyway. So you should be fine in a lot of cases. But again, remember, the idea here is we're trying to configure or see if we can buy a computer at $300. That's good enough. So now let's open this thing up. Some of the other compromises when you buy a computer at a low price point is the build quality. This machine feels like it's aluminum. It may be plastic that kind of has an aluminum paint, but the feel and finish it's not bad. I mean, this is what we get. Now what we get here is the Ryzen 3, the 4 gigs that I mentioned, 128 gigabyte real SSD hard drive. We get an HD camera. We get a nice, plasticky, decent feeling keyboard. The trackpad is a bit small, but again, for the price, that's what we get. The screen side doesn't look too bad. I mean, it's a glossy screen. I'll boot that up in a second so we can see what that looks like.